Alright, I actually forgot to record. Saya baru je record ni. Right, anyway, so those of you who just joined, saya tengok ada juga yang just joined. So for today's topic, we are looking at tax administration and also tax planning, especially on the administration of tax in Malaysia. So we just look at the returns, what are the penalties, why we should submit the returns, how long or what is the time duration given to salaried individuals and also to a person who have a business. So this is the form. If you look at here, these are the general issue of tax return forms normally in February or March, right? Like last time when there is no or more or no, not yet e-filing. So every person or every tax, kita kata person yang eligible to pay tax, they will have different categories of return forms. Even now, we still use the category of the form is still the same. It's just that when you key in the e-filing, so it will automatically say, okay, this is B, this is BE, this is C. But the type of the form or the different categories of form are still there. For example, form B is for individuals. So BE is for employment cases. So for salaried individual, they have to fill up form BE. Right? For individual with other types of income, for example, ada business, ada rental, so they have to file form B. So kalau ada salary sahaja, only salary or only employment, form BE. If you have business, form B. Form C is for companies. Form P is for partnership to report their income, but will not be taxed in their name. So as you all know, when we learn partnership, we know that partnership have to report their income, but they will not be taxed under their name. They will be taxed here. Alright, so for a partner, they will furnish form B, right? Because they are the business income, which is from partnership. Form B is for the partnership sahaja, not the partner. So each partner is taxed on an individual having a business source. So again, each partner ni will fill out form B. Okay. Form T, trust, associations, clubs, societies, deceased persons, estate, and Hindu joint families. Alright, so for trust, they have form T. Form M is for non-residents, right? Receiving income derived from Malaysia. So non-resident individual, they don't have to fill out form B. They have a different form M, right? Because they are non-resident, right? Because remember, resident they do all the relief semua, so non-resident tak ada, so they have different form. Form E is actually for employers. Alright, so these ni A until E, and form B, C, P, T, M ni, they are specific individuals. But for form E, it is actually specifically for the employers, which means the employers must furnish the return of their employees. So as an employer, right, so the employer must actually record or submit to the IRB the remuneration paid to their employees. All right, so these are actually the duties of the employer. All right, what should employer do based on this one, form E? So the employer has various duties under the Income Tax Act. So his compliance includes the following: form E and EA or EC. So under section 83(1), every employer is required to prepare and submit a return form E and EA and also or EC not later than 31st March in the year immediately following the first mentioned year containing. So for example, at the end of each year, the employer must submit to the IRB the EA or EC form. So this one form for employer only. Right? So the employer, let's say they have like 1,000 employees. So every year, for example, for year 2020 baru ni, so the employer must submit to the IRB before 31st March. This E form, form E. So what is included in that form? So number of employees employed, number of employees subjects to deductions, right? Scheduled tax deduction, number of new employees kalau ada for that particular year, number of employees who have resigned, number of employees who have resigned and left Malaysia, and other particulars as may be required by the DG. Right, and then the usual details are name and personal details, official employee, amount of remuneration, right, including benefit in kind, paid, payable, or provided by, and also the provided by the employer to each employee. Ni sambung ayat ni. Alright, so as an employer, they also have duties to submit to the income tax, to the IRB, this information, not later than 31st March. Because why? Because these employees they need this form to help them submit their return before 30th April. Right? So at least ada 1 month for the employees to prepare the tax return. Alright, not only this, the employer has to submit Form E, they also have to inform the IRB if they have new employee. So this is different form. Alright, so if they start to employ individual who is likely to be chargeable to tax, the employer is required to notify the DG within 1 month. Right, for example, they hire a new person, or this new person, person A, first of all, he or she work in company A. And then cukup 6 months, dia pergi another company. So this company ni, the one that they resign and the one yang dia baru join tu, they have to inform the IRB. Alright, so that the tax account dia tu akan follow dia lah kat mana dia pergi and then follow also the employer tu. So besides notice required for new employees, notice is also to be given for termination. Right, again, because when employee cease to employ as an employee, the employer must also submit Form CP222A stating the full name and address and the expected date of cessation of employment not later than 1 month. Because why? So for here, if the person terminates from that particular company, so the scheduled tax deduction will be stopped. So if not, dia akan tolak lagi kan, sedangkan orang ni dah tak kerja dekat sini. Right? So this is the importance of informing the IRB. Sama juga dengan yang kat sini. This one have to start the scheduled tax deduction dia because they just join, right? You tak boleh ada new staff je buat tak tahu je because they have to file the tax return, right? Okay, next would be assessment. Tadi return, when we talk about returns, we are talking about the forms, so how you actually submit. So the assessment is how we actually being assessed by the IRB, but based on the self-assessment system, right? If you can't remember what is self-assessment system, we can go back to chapter 1. It's a system whereby there is non-issuance of a notice of assessment. So the IRB will not send us letter saying that, okay, this is the letter, this is the assessment, this is notice of assessment. You have to submit your tax return. No longer, tak ada. So you just go to IRB website and then go under e-filing, so your name is already there. That is considered as notice of assessment, no longer letter. Those days, they send a notice of assessment, a letter saying that, okay, this is your notice, you have to submit tax return. Now tak ada. So the tax return furnished by the taxpayer is deemed to be notice of assessment. So the date on which the tax return is furnished is deemed to be the date the notice of assessment is issued. Alright, so when we talk about year of assessment, we are talking about the year in which tax is assessed. So for example, we are talking about year assessment 2020. So we are talking about the tax will be assessed for year 2020. Alright, so this is our year of assessment. And you all know we normally use YA je lah to indicate year of assessment, pendek sikit, shorter version. Alright, so for companies, again, I mentioned before, for companies, they have to submit within 7 months. Under section 107 ni, so for company, limited liability, trust body or cooperative, 15 of each month. Alright, ini if they want to pay just like a salary employee, when we pay scheduled tax too. So they can pay every 15 of each month. However, where a company first commences operations during the first basis period, its first installment will commence from the 6th month on the basis period. Okay, and no installment need to be paid if the estimated liability is less than 600 for the year. Alright, for a big company, they have calculated their profit and they project their income or their profit, so they have to pay installment. Just like employees lah, every month bayar. That is why I showed you before. At the end of the year, we can see that how much is the amount of tax to be paid and how much of the amount is actually paid. So that if there is a difference, there will be a tax refund for individual. So for company, if the liability, if the tax payable yang dia calculate to less than 600, they don't have to pay installment, which means at the end of the year, at the end of the basis period tu, terus bayar 600 that amount lah, they don't have to pay installment. Ini this is actually every 15 ni is actually for installment, right here for installment. Alright, tadi kita tengok responsibility of an employer. So what are the responsibilities as a taxpayer? Okay. First of all, the notice of chargeability. Alright, this is especially for a person not residing in Malaysia. So when an individual arrives in Malaysia in a calendar year and is chargeable to tax in Malaysia for that particular year or for the following year, they should notify the DG that they will be so chargeable within 2 months of their arrival. Right, this is as a taxpayer, but normally if you are attached to certain company, so this one the company will do it. Right, for example, company they hire someone foreign worker, so they have to inform the DG, and so the worker don't have to do anything. Normally the employer will do this. So the responsibility to notify is applicable regardless of whether the individual is likely to be a tax resident or non-tax resident. So the IRB will decide whether you are a tax resident or non-tax resident. Okay. So the responsibility applies as long as the individual derives income subject to tax in Malaysia. Okay, so here we are talking about maybe the foreign worker. Alright, and then as an individual or as a taxpayer, we must furnish the tax return. So for individuals, for each year of assessment, every individual who has chargeable income for that year shall furnish a tax return in the prescribed form. So for individual, remember, it's either B or BE, salaried or a person with business. Kalau business 30th June, kalau 30th April, kalau derive income from other non-business source of income. Okay, so kalau ada business 30th June, kalau salary plus rental apa semua tu 30th April. So companies, LLP is limited liability partnership. So kita dah buat partnership juga sebelum ni. So for LLP and trust, they shall furnish the annual tax return within 7 months. And the close of the accounting period which constitute the basis period for the year of assessment. So a company required by law to file its annual tax return by electronic medium or by way of electronic transmission. Okay, ni up to the company lah. So annual tax return by a company must be based on accounts audited by a professional accountant. Okay. So to calculate a tax return for a company, it must be from audited financial statement. What if there is any change of address? Okay, so every person chargeable to tax is required to notify the DG of any change of address within 3 months of the change. So the notification must be made in writing. So duty to keep sufficient records. Okay, like I said before, mesti 7 years. Okay, after the end of relevant year. So where the person is late in furnishing annual tax return, record must be retained for 7 years after the end of year in which the return is furnished. This is for business taking. When the gross annual business taking exceed 150,000, the person must issue printed receipt serially numbered for every sum received for his business activity. So here we are talking about business, like it must be properly done. So person who do not carry on business but are required to furnish a tax return, records must be retained also for 7 years. Okay. All right, how to pay? So we know that we have to pay. We know about the assessment and how to pay. So it can be by installment or monthly tax deduction. So for salary individual, memang the employer akan tolak setiap bulan. So generally tax is payable when assessment is raised, but taxpayers are given 30 days to settle the tax. So for salary individual, don't have to worry. So normally the employer will deduct based on your salary. So tak payah buat apa-apa lah, automatically deducted. If tax is paid beyond the 30 days, a late payment penalty of 10% is levied, and if payment is made beyond the next 60 days, there is an additional 5% penalty levied. Okay, so later on when you work with an employer, so what they will do is that they will have all your details, set up a tax file for you and deduct the salary, so you don't have to pay. So cukup tahun je then only you key in or you go to e-filing websites too, and then easy lah for the relief and whatnot. Okay. But for the monthly installment ni, you don't have to worry. For salary individual, the employer akan buat. But if you have business, itu kena buat sendirilah. Okay, so again, employment income is subject to monthly tax deduction from monthly emoluments. Okay, individual who derive income other than employment income. So the DG may estimate the tax payable based on the preceding year's tax payable and require them to pay the estimated tax in installments at prescribed due date. Okay, again, dia ikut trend juga. So if the estimated tax installment are not paid within 30 days of the due date, a penalty of 10% about the unpaid or paid late is levied juga. Okay. Alright, what about companies, LLP and trust for companies? Tadi individual individual yang salaried and also individual yang ada business. Now for companies, LLPs and trust, they are also required to furnish tax estimate not later than 30 days before the beginning of the basis period for that year of assessment. So the tax estimated will be payable in 12 equal installments starting from the second month of the basis period, and the payment must be made by the 15th day of the calendar month. Okay, ini semua, I think this one, the rest you can read. Tak ada apa lah, this one also you can read. SME, does not qualify. Talk about SME, lupa tak ada apa lah. This is an example, so you can read this example later. Alright, furnish information required by IRB. So every person is obliged to provide information called for by the DG within the time stipulated. So if the information is not provided within the specified time or extended time, and the information relates wholly or partly to a deduction claim, the DG may disallow such deduction under section 39. So in the case of death, okay, the notification of a taxpayer set 3-year limit for the DG to issue assessment on the income derived by a deceased person, just like trust, when you refer to trust note before. So the DG will have 3 years after the date of death. Dia akan assess lah for the next 3 years tu. So the 3-year period commences after the end of the year of assessment in which the DG is informed in writing by the executor of the death of the individual. So mati pun still kena bayar tax if you still have income. So the executor should notify the date of death of the deceased person as soon as possible in order to restrict the 3-year time limit as illustrated below. Right, for example, here we have Mr. AB died on 1st December 2014 and Mr. XY is the executor. Right, so dia ada estate, so Mr. XY ni yang akan manage the estate dia lah. So Mr. XY notified the DG regarding the death of Mr. AB on 29 December 2014. Nampak tak, the date of death is 1st December, so they notify on the 29th December. So the DG has 3 years from the end of 2014, which means until December 2017, to raise any assessment or additional assessment on Mr. AB for year assessment 2014 and or prior years. Okay, so if Mr. XY had notified the DG on 1st July 2017, the DG will have 3 years from the end of 2017, which means until December 2020 for additional assessment or assessment for year assessment 2014 and or prior years. Nampak, lagi cepat dia bagi tahu, lagi cepatlah 3 tahun tu habis. If they inform in 2014 juga, so 2017 settle lah the 3 years. If let's say sini they notified 2017, 3 years dah baru dia notify. So akan berjalan lagi sampai 2020. Alright, so the assessment or the DG will have 3 years untuk calculate or tengok any assessment or additional assessment. Alright, again as an employer, tadi kita dah tengok it's responsibility of employer. So what employees must do, okay, deduct the monthly tax deduction from the remuneration of each of their employees in accordance with the schedule on account of tax. Okay, furnish an employee's return by 31st March. Prepare annual statement of remuneration and make it available to the employees by the end of February following the end of the relevant year. Ini yang tadi E-form tadi lah, EC or EA form tu Because in this form, you will see each employee will see how much is their gross income, how much is the allowance that they get, how much is the deduction. So in one statement. If they have employees living Malaysia, so they should notify the DG within 1 month before an employee living Malaysia for more than 3 months, or retain any monies due to a departing employees under specified circumstances for 19 days kalau ada. Alright, taxpayer also have the right to appeal. Timeliness, submitted within 30 days of the issue of a notice of an assessment, proper form. The appeal must be made in writing using the appropriate form, which is form Q, and also the substance lah. You must have the grounds for making an appeal must be stated. Bagi tu kenapa nak appeal, or let's say tak, you receive a notice saying that you don't pay your tax liability, so you want to appeal. So these are the information needed. So here is the appeal procedure flowchart. So let's say the taxpayer accept the notice of assessment, final and conclusive. So appeal, let's say adalah something tak betul. So appeal apply to the GIR for the extension of time, not certified with reason, forward to SC, so SC reject. If SC agree, so dia akan review balik the notice of assessment. This is actually normally happen to business. Untuk individual, especially salary, tak ada apa sangat lah. If the taxpayer dissatisfied with the notice of assessment, so taxpayer appeals within 30 days or extended period. So depending on whether there is agreement between taxpayer and DJRR and the proposal rejected appeal to SC. So dekat sini ni, the appeal ni buat dengan SC, Special Commissioner of Income Tax, bukan Securities Commission. So dia punya Special Commissioner lah, masih lagi dalam IRB ni. Alright. Alright, sometimes there will also be an appeal on the relief application for error or mistake. Okay, salah pula letak kat situ. Oh, salah letak relief. Ada error or mistake in the written off statement. So should apply in writing to the DJIR branches. Normally we call they ask for a letter, or you can go to IRB office. So request DJIR to forward the SCIT to the branch lah. Ni normally your tax file will be in certain branches in Malaysia ni. So you can check nanti later on when you work. So you can check where is your tax file, which branch your tax file is. So in this case, if there is an appeal on the relief application for error or mistake, so kita akan deal directly with the branch that have your file. Okay, the required conditions are, okay, you must pay the tax already. Tak boleh salah kira tapi belum bayar. That is not considered as error and mistake relief. So the person alleged that assessment is excessive by reason of an error or mistake made by them. The assessment has not become final and conclusive. The person applies for relief within 5 years of the end of the year of assessment within which the assessment was made. Okay, so boleh appeal. Alright, some of the, because I mentioned before, it is mentioned in the act that we have to submit tax return, we have to pay. So these are some of the offences and penalties, common offences and penalties under the income tax act. What happened if we fail to furnish a return or give notice of chargeability? So the fine would be 200 to 20,000 or jail 6 months or both. So the penalty would be 3 times the amount of tax. Nampak tak? It can be or lah. Incorrect returns, okay, you give the incorrect information. The fine would be up to 10,000 and penalty 2 times the amount of tax under charge. Okay, let's say sepatutnya bayar 5,000, you only pay 2,000. Salah kan? So terkurang 3,000 times 2. Nampak? Not only they have to pay the amount yang salah tu, double lagi. Willful evasion of tax. Okay, prosecution, so fine one up to 20,000 or jail 3 years or both, and penalty 3 times the amount of tax under charge. So you cannot run away from this. Once you are prosecuted, once the person is prosecuted, dia kena bayar a lot lah, because this one 3 times. This one 2 times. Kalau incorrect 2 times. Ini sengaja. Incorrect ni mungkin ada mistake lah. This one intentionally, evasion of tax. Leaving Malaysia without paying tax. Obstruction of officers in the course. Fine up to 10,000 juga. Breach of confidence by a classified person and offences by officials. So these are the amount. So this one fine not more than 4,000 and or jail 1 year or both. So normally people choose the, so they are the or. So people choose for. So if they have money, so they just pay. Alright, a little bit on tax audit and investigation. Alright, so under self-assessment system, because you know, if under this system, self-assessment, the IRB give the taxpayer, you know, kita kata the flexibility of calculating their own tax payable. Alright, so if since that is the case, there will also be a lot of tax auditing and desk audit or field audit. Because when we have a self-assessment, it is considered as voluntary compliance. It is mandatory to pay tax, but under the self-assessment system, kita kata the compliance is considered voluntary. Kita buat sendiri kan, every end of the year, and then you do your own tax return, right? But to ensure there is a compliance, so the tax IRB normally conduct tax audit. So sometimes they have a tax visit. So they visit you, they want to visit you, where are you, where do you work, okay? Pre-schedule and due notice is given to the taxpayer to prepare and make available the relevant records and documents for examination by the IRB. So they are coming for audit, for example, for company, kan? Okay, we are coming maybe in 1 month time. So you have the time to prepare all the records, apa semua lah, the 7 years record tu. So tax audit will normally cover the open years, those assessments which are not time. But so tax investigation, on the other hand, involve the surprise element, considered rate lah. So visit ni just a normal audit. Okay, we want to do tax audit in your company, so we have certain amount of time to prepare. So we will come, let's say 1 month. Dia bagi tarikh. For tax investigation, of course kan, because they are doing investigation, surprise lah. Right? Simultaneous searching of multiple premises of the taxpayers' activities and residence for evidence that would otherwise not be disclosed, right? So especially when we have all the so-called celebrities now, all the Insta famous world tu, right? So they always flash their wealth, kan, tunjuk sana tunjuk sini. It is also important to lead a normal and low life. Kalau dia tunjuk macam tu sometimes, because the IRB always get tips. Ada je orang yang akan inform dia. So they can do a surprise visit. Okay, so this is your income, this is your car. Okay, this is my car given by my father, contohnya. Okay, but who pays the installment? Where did you get the money to pay the installment, contohnya? So they can do the tax investigation, right? And sometimes it has some element of fraud and willful default or negligence, which may render it criminal in nature, right? Sengaja tak bayar, willful, ataupun memang nak lari dari bayar tax. So the period covered by tax investigation may exceed the 5 years if there is evidence suggesting fraud, willful default or negligence, right? So there is ada a normal visit or normal tax audit and also tax investigation. All right, next, let's look at tax planning. Okay. All right, so with self-assessment, one has to know how to compute tax and all the compliance procedure along with the penalties for a variety of offences. So as a financial planner, we want to master the tax planning so that we can save some financial resources in legal and appropriate sense for the client. Okay. So the appreciation is very high for good tax planning ideas, and it can only be undertaken when you understand the tax law, right? So again, later on when you want to advise your client, you must have a relevant tax law, right? And in order for you to advise them. All right, so let's talk maybe about tax evasion. So what does it mean by tax evasion? So when we talk about tax evasion, normally it goes together with tax avoidance. So when we talk about tax evasion is illegal, right? It's not legal. It's illegal way to minimize tax liability through fraudulent techniques and like deliberate understatement of taxable income or inflating expenses. So they will do something that is illegal, an unlawful attempt to reduce one's tax burden, right? So we are talking about millions of, if company, they have millions of profit. So what they're trying to do is maybe they understate their income or they inflate their expenses. So when they increase their expenses, automatically their profit will become lower. So lower profit will result in a lower tax payable. Sedangkan they have more, so they just reduce or they just inflate their expenses. Right, so tax evasion is normally done with the motive of showing fewer profits in order to avoid tax burden. Right, so it involves illegal practice such as making false statements, hiding relevant documents, not maintaining complete records of the transactions, concealment of income, overstatement of tax credit, or presenting personal expenses as business expense. Pun boleh, for example, concealment of income. Let's say klien dia ramai, the revenue dia banyak, tapi some of the revenue tu dia tak recordkan. Right, dia ada, but instead of record in the financial statement tu, dia pergi record tempat lain. So it's not included in the correct revenue amount. So that when the amount of revenue is low, dia naikkan pula expenses. So here for example overstatement ataupun kita kata inflate the expenses. Personal expenses pun dia masuk sebagai business expenses juga. So the revenue dia turunkan, lower revenue, higher expenses will give them a lower profit. Lower profit means low tax lah. Or sometimes tak ada tax langsung kan. If it results in a loss, business loss, there will be no tax at all. Tipulah tu macam tu tax evasion, try to avoid paying tax by doing something illegal lah. Right, so tax evasion is a crime for which the excess could be punished under the law. Right, melarikan diri dari bayar tax lah dengan cara yang illegal, illegal practice. Okay, what about tax avoidance? Tadi evade, lari terus, avoid, you try to avoid. So tax avoidance is an act using legal method to minimize tax liability using the tax in a single territory for one's personal benefit to decrease one's tax burden. Alright, tax avoidance takes unfair advantage of the shortcomings in the tax rules. Okay, because we know normally in any rules there are some kind of loopholes, something that we can take advantage of. So this tax avoidance is taking advantage of the shortcomings in the tax rules by finding ways to avoid the payment of taxes that are within the limits of the law. Right, it can be done by adjusting the accounts in such a manner that there will be no violation of tax rules. Tax avoidance is lawful, but in some cases it could come in the category of crime. Boleh jadi juga. Okay. Alright, what about tax planning? Okay, we plan kan? So tax planning, we know when we use the word tax planning here, we are still talking about to reduce the tax liability. Right, so tax planning is a process of analyzing one's financial situation efficiently to reduce one's tax liability. So it involves planning of income in a legal manner. Again, we are talking about legal manner, not illegal, legal manner, to avoid various exemptions and deductions. Right, it involves applying various advantageous provisions which are legal and entitled the assessee to avail the benefit of deductions, credits, concessions, rebate, and also exemptions. So it is an honest approach of applying the provisions which comes within the framework of taxation law. So sama juga dengan tax avoidance tadi, we are talking about something within the framework of tax law, right? So but the tax avoidance tadi, to some extent it can be crime as well, but not for tax planning. So this is actually the difference. I've prepared for you the difference between the three, what is tax evasion, tax avoidance, and also tax planning. So the nature, when we talk about the nature of these three, tax evasion is of course illegal, avoidance and tax planning is legal. So attributes, evasion, illegal and objectionable. So tax avoiding we consider as immoral, legal but not moral. So tax planning is moral. So the motive to conceal tax, to dodge tax, and also to save tax. So consequences for tax evasion, of course, penalty or imprisonment. So for tax avoidance, the consequences, sometimes the deferment of tax liability. You have to pay, but you pay later, contohnya, when you try to avoid. For the tax planning, normally there will be no negative consequences. So for tax evasion, reduce tax liability by exercising unfair means, because they're illegal. For tax avoidance, again, to reduce tax liability by applying the scope of law. Masih lagi within the tax law. So for tax planning, try to reduce the liability of tax by applying the provision and moral of law. So permissibility, only tax evasion is not permissible. Tax avoidance and tax planning, it is permissible. But to some extent, dekat sini ni, it can be crime lah to some extent. But it is still legal, cuma not moral. Kita kata not ethical lah. Alright, the IRB also provide 4 compliance strategies in order for an individual to comply with the tax payment. Right, for example, they provide positive assistance for compliance through taxpayer education support. Reduce opportunities for non-compliance through increased compliance checks, provides disincentive for non-compliance through enforcement, and deter non-compliance through well-publicized criminal prosecution. Right, so what the IRB do is actually to educate the general public on the importance of complying with tax laws and regulations. Because as of now, you don't have to worry, especially when we talk about students, particularly in our faculty, we are business related, who actually taking business related courses. Taxation is actually embedded in the cost structure. So you will learn somehow, you will have certain or some knowledge about taxation. When we look at especially when we talk about students in higher learning institutions, especially students in areas such as science, geography, even kita punya faculty apa kita ada lagi, sains kemanusiaan, all those faculty they don't learn about taxation, but later on they will also become a taxpayer. Nampak tak? Everybody will become a taxpayer, but as in your case, you all learn daripada if you took paper taxation before, you have a lot more information with you. So because you learn about the tax planning, but they don't. Okay, they don't have the knowledge, so they have to find out by themselves how to. Even they don't really understand about the personal relief, so they have to find out information, they have to read. In your case, you know already, by the time you go into the workplace, or by the time you start your business, you already have all this information, and that will eventually help you, especially in planning your tax liability. So it is a bonus, we can say that a bonus point for you, because you learn, because everybody will become a taxpayer one day. But you have the advantage because you already learn in your uni time compared to other students from other faculties. I did some research a few years back asking about the knowledge about taxation. I did only for UPSI students lah, other faculties other than FPE. So the findings actually the knowledge is very low. They don't know what is personal relief pun. They don't know that we are entitled to 9,000 as a personal relief, that we can claim for medical expenses. That a lot of relief. The question was about on relief je, tak salah saya. I can't really remember lama dah, 2-3 years back. So the knowledge is very low because it is not in their syllabus. And I have one question, the final question that I asked them is if they are interested to learn. And surprisingly, the answer for interested to learn, I think more than 80% of the respondents, they are actually interested to learn. because they know nothing and they know that one day they have to pay tax, but they have no knowledge about it. So they are willing to learn, but it's not in their syllabus. Okay, so this is a bonus for you because you can do your own tax planning later. They have to pay people like you to plan for them. So you can plan for yourself, but they have to pay people like you to plan. So somehow it's a good thing juga kan, because they will hire you later. Okay. Next would be right. So when we talk about tax planning for individuals, okay, first of all, for if we're talking about salary individual, okay, salary individual, it's quite limited for you to plan for them. Okay, but we can try, especially for a salary individual, they need cooperation from the employer. Remember when we did our employment income, kita ada all the benefit in kind kan, kita ada housing lah, kita ada accommodation, kita ada car benefits semua tu. Alright, so for the tax planning ni, for individual, for salary individual, we must get the cooperation of the employer. If the employer agrees, then we can proceed. For example, the employee salary package. In some cases or in some companies, they pay the employee very high salary. Tapi cash je. Right? For example, they bayar, okay, this is the remuneration for you, 182,000 ringgit per year. Cash only, nothing. No benefit in kind, no accommodation, no car, no server, no whatever. Cash je tinggi. But what we can plan for them, maybe get a bit low salary rather than a high amount of cash to reduce the amount of cash, but gantikan with the benefit. Give the accommodation. So give the employee car benefit, right? They kurangkan the cash amount, but increase the accommodation and car benefit. Why? Because kita dah calculate kan, for accommodation ada certain amount yang boleh dapat exemption. For car benefit ada certain amount that can get exemption. So this is where you need all the information for you to help calculate with the client. So maybe if they can bargain with the employer and the employer say, oh, okay, since the employer also can save certain amount. For example, when we talk about entertainment expenses, kan, ataupun entertainment allowance. So kita buat from the perspective of the taxpayer or of the employee. But looking from the both perspective, maybe as a tax planner, we can actually talk through the client and with the cooperation of the employer to structure the package. For example, here lower cash remuneration and higher benefit in kind. Nampak tak? If you get the cash amount ni kita terus darab dengan income tax je kan. But if you get the benefit in kind, the accommodation, the car benefit apa semua tu, okay, maybe the tax would be lower. To suit the employee so that the tax payable by employees would be much lower, right? So this is what we can plan for the client. Relief available. Okay, so some clients, they are the policy holder. They have more than one insurance. So they have EPF, they have life insurance. So this is where the relief knowledge comes in, right? Help them to compute or to enjoy as much relief as they can, right? Capital allowances, if the person have a business source, and they can enjoy capital allowances. Capital allowances ni pun, if we go back to this, katakan employer ni, for example, tadi saya kata, instead of bagi dia high cash remuneration, maybe can lower the cash remuneration and give benefit in kind. For example, lower the cash remuneration. For example, this company, dia bagi car benefit dekat employer dia. So the employee get a car. For the company, bila dia ada kereta, remember, dia ada kereta, dia boleh claim capital allowance. Because the car is used by the employee, but the car belongs to the company. Okay, so the company can claim capital allowance. Nampak tak? So the business income dia pun will be lower lah because dia ada capital allowance. That is why when we talk about yang ada dengan employer ni, so we need the cooperation. Alright, so again, for a married individual, you can choose whether to opt for joint or separate assessment. Right, that is why in the e-filing tu, the way we calculate, kita boleh try and error dulu. Okay, again, about relief kan, ada 4 anak, siapa ambil, who will take the relief, that will eventually reduce the tax liability. Alright, joint or separate assessment, kalau only one je yang ada income, and then it is better for you to choose joint assessment. Okay, or both are actually working and then they can use separate assessment. So again, you need all these information to plan, to help plan the tax for the client. What about tax planning for companies? Okay, for companies, for a business, okay, if you want to advise your clients who have business, if they have tax losses, it can be carried forward. Capital allowances, if they have assets, or like what we calculate before, capital allowances, so they are entitled to capital allowances that will eventually reduce their tax payable. Investment incentive, there are a lot of investment incentives now. Tengok je which category do you belong. So a lot of investment incentives. Right, bad debts and also allowable versus non-allowable expenses. So remember when we did our business income last time, business income and business deduction, business deduction tu ada sangat banyak kan. Donation to school lah apa semua tu. So again, that will help you identify the allowable and also non-allowable portion of their expenses that will eventually help the client calculate their income or their chargeable income or their total income that will eventually reduce their tax liability, right? Because the objective of tax planning again is actually to reduce the liability of tax, right? We help them reduce. Kita bukannya nak kata dia jangan bayar, tak. We help them to reduce the liability by applying the provision and also according to the tax rule, right? This is not cheating lah, right? We're still within the tax law, but we help them reduce their liability. All right, I have 5 actually assessment question. You can try dulu buat 3 soalan ni. Okay, dah? Okay, what is the answer for question 1?
C.
C, eh? So companies must file their tax return within 7 months. Okay. Number 2,
D.
due date for monthly installment for a company, limited liability partnership, trust body and cooperative. A, B, C or D? Baca, you must read the question properly. Tax installment. B, 15 of each month. Ada dalam notes tadi. Installment for company, 15 of each month. Number 3, tax planning. Okay. The answer is D, structuring tax affairs lawfully. So A, B, C and D, the answer is D. You can refer to the table tadi. Right, 2 more questions. If you look at the options, A until D tu sama je, same thing. But you have to look at the correct answer for tax avoidance and also tax evasion tu. So what do you think the answer for number 4? Okay, so number 4 is A. Number 5. Number 5 is C, concealment of income. Right, do you have any question for tax admin and tax liability ni? Ada Habis dah. That's why I said this one is quite short. So for next week, I'll let you do your own revision. So there will be no more class next week for week 40. Today pun dah week 13. What I want you to do is, you all dah tengok jadual exam kan? So our paper would be on the 1st of July. And I will do it in the morning. So I will update you the exact time. So so far what I can share with you is you're going to have saya belum decide lagi whether 4 or 6 hours exam. Soalan ni pendek-pendek je. Right, so it's either 4 or 6 hours exam that will start at 9 in the morning on the 1st of July tu. And that will cover 5 questions. No more multiple choice question. Semua structured je and short essay. 5 questions. Answers will be uploaded in My Guru nanti. Soalan pun will appear in My Guru. Saya guna My Guru for your final exam. So we have done with all the quizzes in Google Classroom. So there will be no more quizzes in your Google Classroom. So last week will be the last quiz lah for zakat tu dah tak ada dah. And assignment pun all submitted. So tinggal final exam je lah that will be 40% of the course. And question will be posted in My Guru nanti on the exam date. And topics covered for your final exam is actually all topics, comprehensive exam. 5 questions. So I think if you do revision, if you look at the questions or that we already discussed, for example, the tutorial question yang kita dah buat, the quizzes, the discussion question during class. So basically the format macam tu lah. For example, the earlier topic tu when we did our resident status, our introduction and also chargeable income that will result in one question, so whereby you have to compute the chargeable income. And I think kita buat a few questions juga for chargeable income, so you can refer back to example yang we've done before, the one that we have different types of income and then the relief sampailah you calculate the tax payable, so that that is the basics of taxation lah for individual. And then saya tengah tengok our course content ni, that is chargeable income for individual. We also have employment income and investment income also that can be included dalam tu, the different types of income. Sampailah the computation of individual tax whereby we calculate the tax liability. The next topic yang kita spend quite some time is business taxation, business income and business tax. We also have partnership, we have trust, estate and settlements. We have zakat and also this topic. So kalau you tengok sebenarnya tak adalah banyak sangat because I actually can combine a few topics in one question. Right, so you're going to have 5 questions, 20 marks each, which is equivalent to 100 marks. And for the time too, I think 4.5 hours dah cukup lah kot. Saya belum decide lagi berapa jam. But I need you, I will upload the question later with the declaration form. Macam last semester, since you all dengan saya juga last semester, ada some of you yang hantar the declaration form tu lambat. So please submit the declaration form together with the answer script. So the answer script, just like last semester, what you have to do is you have to upload in PDF form in my Google portal. Cuma like last time I asked you to use your handwriting kan. So maybe for this semester you can type lah. But some question easy untuk tulis tangan daripada type. So up to you to type or to use your handwriting. But you have to upload in PDF format. Not picture format. Upload picture format, saya nak marking tu susah nanti. Any questions tak? So during these 2 weeks time, because you have 1 week revision week kan. So if you need to ask questions or if you need this session like this, or maybe some of you in a group, small group, you want to discuss something with me, you can let me know. And I can still entertain because next week masih lagi consider sebagai masih lagi in our 14th week. So for next week, I will not conduct class like this, but if you need time to discuss anything, you can just let me know so that I can entertain small groups, maybe 2 or 3 person at one time if you need. So kita buat online session macam ni je lah. Any question tak? Ada
No, madam. Thank you.
Alright. So if there's no question, so thank you very much. So those of you yang mana dah dengan saya since last semester, so this will be the end of it lah, 2 semester saja, because next semester saya dah tak ajar AE49, I go back to my root, saya ajar balik AE02, accounting papers. So I wish you all the best, and I'll keep you posted and update you on the information about our coursework and also our final exam. All right, thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you,
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you,
Okay.
madam. Jaga diri. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Madam.